deregulate, let's have a free market economy, let's try and just let the people free, so to speak, and for government to step back away from a lot of these things. So as a result of that, the government is responding. If you look around, a lot of privatization is going on, and we thought, okay, fine, it's time to start looking at each sector. And we looked around us and found out that the one area where we would have the greatest impact on the economy, and certainly influenced by the drive of the particular minister, was agriculture. So we thought, okay, look, it's time that we look at agriculture and see how we can create a summit around agriculture. And this won't be the only one. We would continue to go into other areas as well.
What kind of signs did the NESG see, or yourself, to perhaps that will give you some sort of encouragement to say, well, if we talk about this, we do believe that this could jumpstart certain actions here and there?
Well, if you look back at Nigeria's history, we have always fundamentally been an agricultural country. It has been one area where, when you look at the trajectory of the country, straight after independence, we were on a positive roll. And it wasn't until we had the incidents of oil and OPEC and sort of the sudden huge arrival, so to speak, of wealth from oil. Before then, we were very, very agriculturally focused. The whole country revolved around agriculture. If you look at it, our banking system, our even our educational system, in those days, to get to the likes of the University of Ibadan, you had to have really, really good A levels to go and study agricultural science, agricultural economics, and so on and so forth. So it's our history, our heritage literally was based on agriculture. And we just looked around us also and thought that, look, what particular area in this country could actually get everybody engaged? We've been struggling with industrialization, but when you look at the history of other countries, industrialization was based on agriculture. It was the ability to transform what you till from the land and what you harvested into something that will end on the shelf that really drove industrialization. And so we're trying to industrialize, and yet we're not looking at the basic foundation that would drive that ability to achieve that. So we thought, look, if you look around you, for every single reason, agriculture seems to be the only way. If you look at oil, for example, I always put up this argument that if you look at a 10-liter bottle of oil and a 10-liter bottle of palm oil, the value to Nigerian society in the palm oil is a lot more than the liter of crude oil, because so many families, so many lives, they revolve around producing that compared to the one digging a hole in the ground and pumping oil and shipping it out somewhere.
When we talk about a summit like this, 19th in the series of NESG, and now we're talking about agriculture, more or less like the cliche, back to the ground, earth, green trees, all of them coming back. The man in the village you talked about, who places some more emphasis and importance in some of this oil palm, how does he benefit in all of this that we'll be talking about right in this hall? The man in your village, the man in my village who hasn't got any access to any of some of these tools or even a television set. How does he get some of the gains you've been discussing in this summit?
Well, it's very simple. Let's appreciate that the agriculture we're talking of now is, pardon the expression, real agriculture. We're talking of commercial agriculture. We're talking of large-scale, humongous agricultural projects. And there's no way the man in the village will not benefit, because all the projects to date that we know about, you've always had these extension services. In fact, it's a case of thank God you guys are here, because even if I till my land, my little plot of land, I can always feed into your system. I will always benefit.
Do they still exist, extension services?
Well, I think, yes, you find that they do. Most of the people that are setting up farms, they ask these farmers that are around them to say, look, you know what, for whatever I'm doing, have your own little plot here. And even though you are working in my farm, have your own little plot, and you can always contribute to what I'm doing. And they get benefits. Sometimes the large farms actually, they pass over a bit of fertilizer, they pass over a bit of advice. They're actually helping the small-time farm of old to upgrade and upscale into something that is a lot more interesting. If you go to the likes of Shonga Farms and so many other farms around, the scale is one which actually encourages the small farmers to say, well, thank God you guys are around, because we're learning a lot from you. So I think it's working well. but you've got to have the mindset and understand that we're talking of large-scale farming. The tradition in the past was always to have to treat farming as a kind of a developmental aid, let's support the rural areas and so on type of thing. But we're saying it's big business. It's humongous business. That's what drives the United States.
There's definitely that part where, you know, yes, big business comes in. Sometimes small business go extinct, especially in that particular area, because it becomes, they can't compete. It becomes not profitable for them. So is the summit also going to be considering that perspective as to how, yes, big businesses come in, but, you know, they don't kill the small businesses. The small family farming businesses are still left to survive.
Okay, it's all about a value chain. It's about a community. It's not about competition. If I come and I start producing at a scale that's higher than yours, I'm not taking business away from you. I'm not driving you away. It's a very complementary thing rather than a competitive thing. It's not a case of saying that I'm going to drive the small farmers away. Quite the contrary. I think, and from what I understand, most of the farmers are benefiting from this. So I can't see the competition in this. The whole idea of what we're talking about is let's appreciate that this whole farming business, the way we're describing it, is part of a huge chain of activities. It's a value chain. And each person's got to play a particular role in the whole process of what's going on. Let me give you another example. We talk about the fact that all our small-scale industries and cottage industries aren't doing very well. And it's because we don't have these huge manufacturing units who draw on the raw materials and the partly processed products and the partly finished products to go into their system. And so we struggle to get cottage industries and SMEs to work when normally they should be working to feed into a larger, more complex system. An auto plant, you know, anywhere in the world, you have anything about, they talk about thousands and thousands of suppliers, and each person is doing his own little bit, and they feed into it, and that's why the small guy who's making screws and nuts and bolts and so on can get on with it. The same thing with farming. There's a whole process. There's something for everybody to participate in, not a competitive thing.
I totally understand that, but what I'm looking at is the value chain itself. I mean, we understand the value chain.
Sure.
We're looking at the fact that land, for instance, is a finite resource, and that, you know, for many years, many families, you know, small families have owned portions of land where they've farmed, you know. So if you haven't, say, big businesses coming to, say, do the actual farming,
Sure.
what you most likely might get in that situation is most times taking over most of the land, possibly almost relegating the small farmers, as it were. And if you know that it's also on a production scale, oftentimes the more you produce, the lesser your costs are, and you definitely will be able to put out food at a cheaper rate, and that could actually drive the small farmers in.
I'm not sure. Well, if you feel that way, then maybe the things that we don't understand, because if you look at certainly data and all that has happened to date does not speak to what you've just described. Maybe you're saying that, look, let's be careful, and maybe the message I'm getting from you is let's be sensitive to the people who are already farming. Let's be sensitive, like when we do things on a large scale, that we don't end up pushing people out or oppressing people. But like I said before, if I come in and I have to take, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5,000 hectares of land to farm, which is a lot, then if I happen to take over an existing farm, I'm hoping, and it has happened before from what I know, whereby the local village itself actually negotiates, the Bale or whatever, they actually negotiate and say that, look, okay, we're either going to let you have the land or we're going to allow this person or this farmer to participate. You find that the size of land that the typical farmer, as we know him today, that deals with, is very, very, very small compared to the kind of things we're talking about. And so they're absorbed, and it's really no pain. And like I said, most of those farmers, the big-time farmers now, they need these guys. They know, they understand the terrain, they've been around, and they're the ones that are providing a lot of the labor as well.
You know, I'm trying to also keen to what she's saying, because I think we can actually get into that tradition you just talked about. A whole lot of people don't even know that traditionally the United States are farmers, you know, and they still keep that tradition to the extent that food is so cheap there, and a whole lot can be taken out. So for the man in Nigeria who would want to get into this big dream, you also mentioned the Songhai farm in Port Novo in Benin Republic. Do we have enough of them who are trained and skilled in producing different kinds of produce that at the end of the day, we can actually say we've taken